So right off the bat, Doctor, we've got to ask you about Santa Claus, because honestly, that was such great news, especially to children, when you came out and said he is immune. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, he is. I actually had the opportunity to go up to the North Pole a little while ago and do some lab tests on him, and looks like he's got a lot of what we call innate immunity against coronavirus. So that means he can't get infected and he can't infect anybody else. So I think we're good to go for Christmas.
That's so awesome. That's maybe the best news of 2020 so far.
Right, exactly.
NORAD is not even letting the pandemic deter them. They're still going to track Santa, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Everything is just the way it has been all along. So that's pretty good.
Okay, so Santa is a pretty popular guy, but this year your notoriety has blown up. I mean, from the bobblehead to the donuts to People Magazine, Time Magazine, you name it. The list is so long. How do you stay grounded?
Well, you just have to focus on what your primary purpose and job is, and that is, as a physician and a scientist and a public health person, my job, my purpose is to protect the health and the safety and the well-being of the American public, and indirectly for the rest of the world because of our influence. And I just focus on that. That other stuff is nice. It's kind of cute, but I can't get distracted by it, because when you start getting distracted by it, then you start to take yourself a little too seriously. And I have never been one to take myself seriously. So although that is kind of amusing, I focused like a laser on my main job.
It must have been fun to see Brad Pitt playing you on SNL.
Well, it was, it was interesting. It was almost an accident. Somebody just casually asked me on an interview, just the way we're having an interview now, saying that if ever you wanted anybody to play you on Saturday Night Live, who would it be? So, I have about 4 or 5 favorite actors. Brad Pitt is certainly one of them, Leo DiCaprio and Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. So I just said Brad Pitt.
No way.
And the next thing I know, Brad Pitt was playing me on Saturday Night Live. He did actually a very good job. He did. I mean, at the time I had a vocal cord polyp and my voice was very scratchy. Mm-hmm. And he imitated that really well, and he even got the Brooklyn accent pretty well too.
He did a great job. Did your daughters crack up?
Oh yeah, because they are also very tuned into this kind of fun thing. My daughters are interesting. They are very publicity averse. So although they don't mind my being out there, they don't really like themselves having any focus, which is interesting. They're not basking in this attention. They're running away from it.
How old are they?
34, 31, and 28.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You have your hands full.
Yeah.
Well, so there's also a downside to the fame. I mean, do all those things, the criticisms, the threats, does that scare you? What does your wife say about that?
It's very interesting. There really is a sharp dichotomy of this. There's a lot of adulation, a lot of attention, a lot of, public attention on the one hand, but on the other hand, there's the reflection of the extraordinary divisiveness in society. I mean, my message is a public health message, and it really is stunning that when I try to put out a public health message, like wearing masks and avoiding congregate settings and crowds, that triggers not just opposition, but threats of violence to my life and my health, and harassment of my family, my wife and my daughters. Whoever these strange people are out there, they track down, the capability of knowing everyone's phone number and where they live and where they work. I don't get frightened by that. I mean, it's actually triggered the requirement of my having federal agents protecting me essentially all the time.
Wow.
That is a little unusual. That's not something that someone who's involved in health and medicine usually gets exposed to. But the thing that bothers me about it is the cowardly harassment of my wife and my children. I mean, that's really bush league stuff. You know, I really would like to get my hands on those people who actually do that. If they want to come after me, fine, you know, who cares? But, you know, come on, guys and ladies, whoever you are, you know, don't be harassing my children. That's ridiculous.
It is. And speaking of people who are like that, how do you get through to these people who still are not wearing masks and still believe somehow, even though all the numbers are there in the news, that this is not a real threat? How do you get through to them?
You know, that's a good question. I'm always somewhat optimistic about you can get anything done if you try hard enough. And that's been my mantra all along. But I have to tell you now, for months and months, trying to get people to realize and appreciate something that's staring them right in the face, to me, is stunning. I mean, I've never seen anything like this, where even in areas of the country where the hospitals are almost being overrun with people in intensive care who are suffering and dying from COVID-19, the people right there still calling it fake news or made up or conspiracy theories. It's just stunning. I mean, it's very tough to believe how people have such ingrained divisiveness in them that anything that the other side says has to be fake news, even though you're standing there looking at people in the hospital in your own town, in your own city, in your own state. That to me is just incomprehensible.
It is. So what do you do? Just keep pounding the message out and keep trying, right?
You have to. You really can't give up. I mean, we are in such a precarious situation right now. If you just look at the numbers, you know, after you see the numbers every day, it becomes numbing. But those numbers represent real people, people who are getting sick, people who are suffering, and people who are dying. If you look now, we have about 280 plus thousand deaths. We have, you know, 14, 15 million infections. Every day, we have between 100 and 200,000 new infections and about 2,000 or more, sometimes between 2,000 and 3,000 deaths per day. Hospitalizations are well over 100,000. Those numbers are shocking. I mean, the frustrating thing about it is that we're not helpless in this regard. We can do something about it. We know from other countries and even from our own states and cities that those places that have mitigated by simple public health means, universal wearing of masks, avoiding direct contact and keeping distance, avoiding crowds in congregate settings, washing hands, doing what seemingly normal, fun, social things like gatherings of 10 or more people. That's where you get the transmission and the acquisition. And yet, as often as we say that, so many people don't heed that. And that's the reason why we're having those startling numbers that we see every single day. If we just did the simple things, we could turn it around. It's not beyond our capability of turning it around.
That's what our public health director, Barbara Ferrer, said yesterday. She said it's frightening and it's looking bleak, but we could be turning it around. Are you cautiously optimistic about the vaccines and maybe see light at the end of the tunnel?
Oh, absolutely. I'm actually a bit more than cautiously optimistic. I'm actually really quite enthusiastic. The fact that we now have vaccines that we will very soon, within a week or two, be putting the vaccine into people, a vaccine that has been shown to be extraordinarily efficacious, 94 to 95% efficacious, and almost 100% efficacious against severe disease, is something beyond what we would have hoped for. So we are really very fortunate that, you know, the science that has been going on for years before has brought us very rapidly to a situation where, as you said, it's the light at the end of the tunnel. If we get a substantial proportion of the people in this country vaccinated, we could turn this thing around really quickly. I mean, we're getting vaccine into people December, we get into January, February, March. By the time we get to April, most of the general population will be eligible. You know, we're having the prioritization of the people of high priority first, healthcare workers, people in nursing homes. By the time you get into the first quarter of 2021, then it'll open up to virtually anybody, any normal man or woman who doesn't have an underlying condition, so that we hope by the time we get to the late spring, early summer, we could get the majority of people vaccinated. If we're successful in doing that, that really could be the game changer. The only thing is, there still are people who are reluctant, or at least cautious is maybe the right word, about whether or not they want to get vaccinated. And we're trying to make sure they understand that the process of the determination of whether a vaccine is safe and effective is a completely independent and transparent process, not driven by the government, not driven by the pharmaceutical companies, but the determination is made by independent, trained people whose job is to have expertise in that particular area. So that's the reason why we're out there encouraging people that when the vaccine does become available, to get vaccinated, to essentially protect yourself as well as your family.
If anything at all good has come out of this horrifying pandemic, what do you think it is?
Well, I think a couple of things. It's really the demonstration of the extraordinary bravery and commitment of our healthcare providers, who really put themselves on the line every single day, risking their own lives and their health and those of their family to take care of people. That really is something very special. These people are really heroes and heroines. And the other important thing is how science has come to the rescue, in the sense of, in less than a year, to do something that a decade ago would have seemed unimaginable, to go from the recognition of a brand new virus to having a safe and highly efficacious vaccine available to be administered to people within less than a year. If you had told scientists that a decade ago, they would have told you you were imagining things, that could never happen.
You know, in the beginning, they said when you bring home your groceries, you need to pretty much wash off every single thing, even your produce. Is that still the case?
You know, it's probably better to just wash your hands frequently, because when people start feeling that they need to wipe everything down multiple times, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you might want to get some wipes and put it on a doorknob or something like that. But to compulsively feel you can't touch something unless you wipe it down would probably create more stress than it would real protection. So what we tend to do is to tell people to really just wash your hands as frequently as you possibly can.
And don't touch your face, right?
Yeah, for sure. And wear a mask.
Yeah, always, always. You have a big milestone birthday coming up. It's kind of a bummer that it had to be this year, but Christmas Eve of all times. What are you going to do for it?
Well, it's going to, as you said, it's going to be somewhat modified. My family, this will be the first Christmas and birthday that I did not spend with my daughters. They live in different parts of the country, San Francisco, New Orleans, Boston. And we are telling the rest of the country that we should curtail, to the extent possible, travel. So if I'm telling the rest of the country to do that, I think we have to show an example in my own family. So it's going to be an unusual Christmas and birthday. You know, we usually make it a family affair. It's going to be just my wife and I. But what we did in Thanksgiving, which we're also going to do over the Christmas holiday, is to sort of have a meal, but put the Zoom on and spend an hour or two talking with the girls and just acting like they were there. It isn't a perfect solution, but it's better than nothing.
True. You got to do what you can, right? What is the first thing you're going to do when this whole thing is over?
Wow. That's really a good question. It's a simple thing, but, just to go to a restaurant or to a bar where You know, when I get home late at night from work, my wife works here at the NIH with me, and we almost every night go home together. And it's usually pretty late. I think we're both kind of in the category of workaholics. And what I used to like a lot was, rather than go home and cook, to just on the way home stop at a favorite small restaurant or a bar and sit there and, you know, have a beer and a hamburger or something and just relax. We haven't been to an establishment like that literally since maybe February. Everything we've done is take out because of the fact that most of the restaurants don't have seating. I'd like to get back to that kind of normality, just to sort of reconnect with the way things were when they were normal.
And just to close, because I know your time is very precious, where do you get your energy? Do you even have time to work out?
You know, I do. I mean, if there's one thing I try to carve out, even if it's rather late in the evening, I used to run every day here at the NIH. We have a beautiful campus, and there's a park right by that you could run through, you know, listen to the birds. It's really great. But I can't do that now because my day is just completely packed, a 17, 18-hour day. But when I go home in the evening, I make it a point with my wife to kind of power walk in the neighborhood. It's dark. It isn't as pleasant as doing it with the sun shining on your face. But that exercise is absolutely essential to kind of defusing myself from the tension of the day.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for everybody. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Fauci, and all your work and your calming presence on everybody you speak to and who hears you. Hopefully all the people will get the message and put on the mask. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell for all notifications from radio.com. While you're at it, why don't you check out some of our other great videos.